Bretta Hoffman, together with Ben Rottenborn, we represent Amber Laura Heard. Will you please state your name and address?
Sure, it's Adam Robert Waldman, Washington, D.C.
And what is your current occupation?
Attorney. I'm also involved with a skincare company in a variety of capacities.
How long have you been an attorney?
I think since 1995.
Do you currently represent John C. Depp II, who I will be referring to in this deposition as Mr. Depp or Depp?
I do.
And is this representation an attorney-client representation?
It is.
Does it include any other type of representation of Mr. Depp other than as an attorney-client?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question on the grounds of attorney-client privilege and attorney work product. He can't answer that question without disclosing communications between himself and his client, Mr. Depp. As you're aware, Ms. Bredehoff, the court has ruled that Mr. Depp has not waived attorney-client privilege and will not be waiving attorney-client privilege. So you're aware of that.
So, Mr. Chu, I'm not sure that you heard my question. I was actually asking him if he had any other type of representation relationship with Mr. Depp other than as an attorney-client.
I think he can answer that yes or no, but I would instruct the witness on behalf of Johnny Depp not to disclose any communications you've had with your client.
No.
So just so we're clear, since we had a little bit of record back and forth, the only way in which you represent Mr. Depp is as an attorney-client representation. Is that correct? I'm sorry, Mr. Waldman?
I believe that's true.
Okay. And you are here today providing this deposition under a subpoena and then subsequent notice, correct?
Yes.
And when did you first become Mr. Depp's counsel?
I think that it was around October 2016.
And what is your role in this case as counsel for Mr. Depp?
Objection. Sure. I would instruct the witness not to answer that question.
Okay, I'll follow the instruction.
When did you first meet Mr. Depp as opposed to first start representing him?
I first met him in October of 2016.
How is it that you came to meet Mr. Depp?
The general counsel that I referenced a moment ago asked me to go and have a meeting with him, with Mr. Depp, and to talk about a financial problem that he was having.
Did you enter into a written representation agreement with Mr. Depp when you began your representation?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question. That calls for attorney-client privilege.
Okay, I follow the instruction.
Have you entered into more than one representation agreement with Mr. Depp during the course of your representation?
Same instruction not to answer. He can't answer that without disclosing attorney-client communications and attorney work product.
Mr. Waldman, when did you consider your attorney-client relationship with Mr. Depp to have begun?
I believe it began the night I met him, actually.
Sometime in October 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Has the attorney-client relationship between you and Mr. Depp been severed at any point between October 2016 and the present?
Would instruct the witness not to answer that question on the grounds that you can't answer that question without disclosing attorney-client communications.
Okay, I accept the instruction.
As Mr. Depp's attorney, you have provided him with advice. Is that fair to say?
That's correct.
And you have charged Mr. Depp for your advice, correct?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question. You can't answer that without disclosing attorney-client communications and the fee arrangement. In any event, is irrelevant. But I'm instructing him not to answer on the grounds of privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Mr. Waldman, when you provide legal services in an attorney-client relationship, your understanding of that is that you provide advice and your client in turn compensates you in some manner. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, as a general matter, that's how I understand an attorney-client relationship, yes.
And has Mr. Depp paid you for advice?
I do instruct the witness not to answer on the grounds of attorney-client privilege. You can't answer that question without disclosing your communications with Mr. Depp.
I accept the instruction.
Well, let's go general again and see if maybe we can work at it from that perspective. So in your relationship with your clients, you provide advice and it's up to the client to determine whether to follow that advice. Would that be fair to say?
As a general matter, I do agree with that statement, yes.
All right. And by the same token, it would be up to the client to determine whether to reject your advice in whole or part, correct?
You're still speaking in general.
Correct.
In general, yes.
Okay. Now, did your relationship with Mr. Depp, and I'm talking about your attorney-client relationship, deviate from those general principles that in some way Mr. Depp is not permitted to follow or reject your advice?
Would instruct the witness not to answer the question based on attorney-client privilege.
I accept the instruction.
Now, Mr. Depp has the right to terminate your representation at any time. Is that correct?
But yes, I think it's true.
I think we need to let...
Would be free to terminate at any time.
My apologies, Mr. Waldman. I didn't realize you were still talking. Did you finish?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Now, has Mr. Depp terminated your representation of him at any time between October 2016 and the present?
That's the same question that I instructed Mr. Waldman not to answer before, just stated in a slightly different way, so it would instruct the witness not to answer that question.
I accept the instruction.
Now, and Mr. Depp, as the client in your relationship, is in the position to make the final decision regardless of your advice. Would you agree?
I would instruct the witness not to answer that question. I don't know that I know he can't answer that question without disclosing communications with Mr. Depp. So I instruct the witness not to answer.
I accept the instruction.
Mr. Waldman, if you were advising a client in an attorney-client relationship and you were in settlement negotiations, would it be you or the client who has the ultimate decision-making ability?
But to speculate about the question, yes, generally the client would be responsible for deciding, the ultimate outcome of the settlement. Yes.
Now, you met Mr. Depp after he and Amber Heard had split up. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you met Mr. Depp after he and Amber Heard had reached a settlement in their divorce. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
So you have no personal knowledge of anything that went on during their marriage. Is that fair to say?
Well, it depends what you mean by personal knowledge. I wasn't there, if that's what you mean. Correct.
You never witnessed any interaction between Mr. Depp and Amber Heard prior to October 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have no personal knowledge of any conduct by either of them against the other prior to October 2016. Is that correct?
Again, if you're asking me, do I have any knowledge of their conduct, I think I have knowledge of their conduct. I think maybe you're asking me, did I witness conduct?
I'm asking personal knowledge, which would mean you would have had to have witnessed it.
If you're asking whether I've witnessed it, the answer is no.